if you shade like this and you want to shade like this or like this, I'm about to show you the best way you can do it. Honestly though, I'm so sorry that you shade like this because you weren't really taught how to shade properly, or you just don't know what you're doing. So I'm about to change the game for you. For any of your drawings that you want to create, you're gonna have smooth shading after this video. I have these 2 sheets of paper right here. Now, these, I call them our practice sheets. You can use a sketchbook, you use like mixed media, regular sketchbook paper to practice your shading. What I recommend you doing is finding which technique works for you. For me, I love hatching. Before I started drawing with a ballpoint pen, I cross hatch, but now I mainly just hatch, and as you can see, my lines look so much more cohesive, my shading looks more cohesive if I just hatch in one direction. But remember, you can achieve the same effects using cross hatching as well. It does not have to be hatching. What I do with these sheets of paper, I will draw on a small section of the paper and just create random lines right next to each other to create a hatching technique. And I'll just do this over and over and over. And the reason why you want to practice this and draw these hatching lines or cross hatching lines over and over is to build muscle memory. Now, muscle memory is super important when it comes to drawing, because if we didn't have muscle memory, I wouldn't be able to do this. I would just learn how to do something one time and then draw a portrait like this and then move on to the next portrait, and then it would turn out nothing like this. So that's why muscle memory is so important, because it's that brain to muscle connection that allows you to recreate amazing shading, use your skills and your technical skills to create beautiful drawings no matter what it is. This is how you shade properly using cross hatching or hatching technique. It's all about lines. And what I see a lot of artists doing when it comes to drawing lines is that they go back and forth like a zigzag or a Z. And that is something you do not want to do, because if you notice, you have these dark dots around each end of the line. You don't want that. What you want is you want to place your pen on the paper and draw a line in your direction and lift it up. As you can see, there's no dark dots on each end of the line, and that's what you want to achieve smooth shading. Another thing that might be holding you back when it comes to shading is how you hold your pen. To be honest with you guys, I see a lot of beginners, they grip their pen like it's going to run away. No, you want to lightly grip your pen, just let it rest in your fingers. It's okay if you hold your pen like this, or even like this, which is strange. You want to hold your pen like this, let it rest in your fingers. You want it to be comfortable. And then you lightly place your pen on your paper like that. And just draw a line very lightly. Try not to apply too much pressure to the paper, like that. And this is what you're gonna do over and over and over again. I must use my non-dominant hand so I can see what it feels like for you guys as a beginner. But honestly, this is probably what toddlers feel like when they draw for the first time. But yeah, my lines are super wobbly. As you can see, as I draw lines in my direction, going towards my body, my lines seem a lot smoother. So that's what you want to do when it comes to hatching, like that. The more you hatch, the easier it is to create the same width between each line. So say if I want to go wider, keeping the same width or the same spacing between each line, and then I can go closer like this. Practice this technique over and over and over and over and over and over and over. I cannot stress that enough. As you can see, for these nose sketches, I use hatching technique, and I did the same exact thing I did over here. I just created lines over and over and over and over and over. I don't want you guys to think that that's all you have to do when it comes to shading. Another thing when it comes to shading is called layering. I have a book called The Secrets of Drawing with a Ballpoint Pen, and I do go over this in a book, plus so much more. The key to layering is to draw these lines like I just did, but then do those lines on top of those initial lines. So you want to draw lines on top of lines, on top of lines, on top of lines, on top of lines. And the more lines you draw on top of one another, the darker the value is going to be. As you can see for this portrait that I just showed you, the dark areas like this shadow right here under the lip, under the nose, under the eyebrow. That's all layering, like layering these lines over and over and over and over. So I'm taking this sheet of paper right here, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. So let's create a box. That is not a perfect box. And I'm gonna hatch inside this box. That is one layer of hatching. Now let's add two. Let's stop halfway. Now I added two halfway through the box. Now let's add three. That's three. Let's add four halfway. And that's four, and let's add five. As you can see, we're creating a smooth gradient from a very dark value to a lighter value. On this side, on the upper right, this part right here, let me split it into two triangles. This is one layer. This is five. This is my secret on how to create smooth gradients, how to create smooth shading with just hatching. And it's that simple. This is also a part of the secrets to drawing with a ballpoint pen, which is my book on how to draw with a pen. I do go over this in one section. Basically, you can draw a rectangle. In one box, you can create a very dark value. Other box, you can create a lighter value. And then the goal in the middle is to blend these two values together, like on this side. If you practice this every day for a week, you're gonna become a pro by the end of the week. Trust me. I felt like I didn't know how to shade with a ballpoint pen until I started practicing that. Cross-hatching is really no different, to be honest with you. Cross-hatching is doing the same thing, drawing lines in one direction, but you draw another set of lines in the opposite direction. There's really not that much difference to those two techniques. You can apply the same practice with cross-hatching as well. This is one of my favorite sketches because I wanted to show people that you can create smooth lines no matter what type of paper you're drawing on. Yes, mixed media sketchbook paper is great, which is on here, but you can also use like notebook paper or my favorite, watercolor paper. But I do recommend starting off with sketchbook paper because it doesn't have too much texture to it, but it's also not too smooth where it's gonna be hard to create this like gradient effect. Now, there are so many different types of shading techniques I do use. No more than hatching, but there's also like stippling, scribbling, which I do go over in my ebook. But if you're using watercolor paper, like right here, I noticed that a lot of pen artists, they love using the scribbling technique when drawing with a ballpoint pen. A mistake I see beginners make when it comes to scribbling or using scribbling technique is that they scribble like this. Now, you're probably wondering, that's scribbling, so what's wrong with it? What's wrong with it is that you're creating one shape, which is a circle, over and over and over. Now, if you want to create a smooth texture or a smoother texture, I wouldn't recommend doing this technique, which is creating these circles over and over and over. What I recommend you doing is going in all different types of directions. You can do a circular motion, you could do a S motion, you could go horizontal, vertical, all over the place, like this. And the reason why I do recommend using this instead of that, because this creates larger gaps within the negative space in between these lines, versus this one, you kind of hit all of the negative spaces the more you do it. As you can see, the lines are kind of fading away the more I draw these lines in. That's strange, isn't it? The lines are disappearing as I draw more lines. And then you could just keep doing this as long as you want in a larger area if you want. It seems a lot more cohesive than this one. When you do create lines, no matter if you're hatching, cross hatching, whatever it is, or even scribbling, the thing you want to know is that the more pressure you apply to the paper like this, the bolder, the darker your line is going to turn out. But the less pressure you apply to the paper like this, the lighter and thinner your line is going to turn out. So it's good to understand when to use more pressure and when not to use as much pressure. I don't discriminate. You can also use this technique when it comes to drawing with graphite as well. I have my mechanical pencil right here, and I also have this pencil right here. As you can see, when I do draw with graphite, I do use the same techniques, which is hatching. And with pencil, you have more room to create zigzag. So instead of just drawing one direction like this with pencil, you have more room to go back and forth like this if you're drawing lightly, because as you notice, the ends aren't as dark compared to the line itself. But if you apply more pressure like this, you might have some darker dots at the end of each line. But it really depends on what type of pencil you're using, how much pressure you're applying to the paper as well. But for most of the time, if I'm being honest, I do shade back and forth like this with pencil. It's not as important to do this with pencil because with pen, obviously it's ink. I will scribble depending on what I'm drawing and what the values look like in the drawing. But other than that, I think I just prefer to go back and forth to create smooth skin textures. The secret to drawing with pen though is to treat your pen like you're drawing with pencil. I know that it's confusing at first because you can erase pencil. Pencil just gives your drawing or your shading a different look. But once I started to treat my pen like my pencil, then that's when I saw a lot of progress in my shading. I know it's hard to transition at first, but the more you draw with a pen, the easier it becomes, trust me. And the thing you need to know is that you're going to make mistakes when drawing with a ballpoint pen. You cannot escape it. Like, you want to make mistakes. Mistakes will help you become and learn how to be a better artist. Here is an example of one of my ballpoint pen drawings. This is a portrait of Dolly Parton. This shading is super smooth. And I wasn't able to complete this if I didn't treat my pen like I was drawing with a pencil, basically. Throughout all the mistakes I made throughout the years with drawing with a ballpoint pen, I realized that you have to be very intentional about what you're drawing in and how much pressure you apply to the paper. But remember that everything's not gonna be perfect. For example, of everything not being perfect is the hair. To you, it probably does look perfect, but there's so many mistakes I did make in the hair. And there's so many things I wanted to add, like more detail, more highlights, but I just couldn't because it was too complicated. But at the end of the day, as long as I got the overall shape down, I create smooth shading. As you can see, I mainly use hatching. It looks beautiful. Make sure you just practice shading with a pen. This is possible for you, trust me. I've been drawing for pretty much my whole life. I'm still young, but I've been drawing for my whole life. And I learned quick when it comes to drawing with a pen. So you can do the same thing. You just have to practice these lines right here over and over and over. This will really help you with your pencil drawing as well, not just with ballpoint pen. These are some of my secrets to drawing with ballpoint pen. Like I said before, I do have an ebook called The Secrets of Drawing with Ballpoint Pen. Link is in the description. This book basically goes over everything you need to know about how to shade with a ballpoint pen. It's very beginner friendly. And I really hope you guys took something out of this. Get to drawing. Like practice. Take your sketchbook wherever you go. Go out to the park. If you're at a restaurant, if you're at a coffee shop, take your sketchbook and just practice your line work, your shading. Peace out.